Okay, so we'll start lying down. So come to a comfortable position on your back. Just taking a moment to settle. So you might have legs outstretched, or you might have knees bent, soles of the feet on the mat. Maybe knees resting together, taking the feet out a little wider so the knees really can rest against each other. And if for any reason it doesn't feel comfortable to be on your back, then you could come to a comfortable, supported, seated position. So that might be sitting with legs crossed, or sitting on heels, or it might be sitting in a chair with support. If you can be on your back, great, to really maximize connection with the ground, but most importantly, take what feels sustainable and comfortable for you. And then take some time to settle. So once you're physically settled, then start to bring your awareness inwards, closing your eyes or softening your gaze. Start by bringing your attention to your breath. So see if you can bring attention to your breath without disturbing the breath, without consciously starting to control the breath in any way. And if you find that you kind of have by instinct, just observe what comes up for you as you notice that. Just notice. See if you can let it go. Just allow the breath to come and to go. See if you can start to use the exhale to nurture a sense of the body releasing down into the ground a little more. So if you're lying on your back, then perhaps developing a sense of the whole of the front of the body softening and releasing into the back body. And the back body softening, releasing, spreading into the ground. And if it feels helpful and open to you, then you could start to make the exhale a little longer now. So just taking a bit more time over the exhale, perhaps having a sense of allowing yourself to get to really get to the bottom of the exhale, to the end of the exhale. And then just allow the inhale to just come in naturally. If you find that you're gasping for the inhale, then ease off from that lengthening of the exhale. But just really spending some time with the exhale so that you can really develop that sense of releasing, connecting with the ground. Anytime you notice that your mind is distracted away from the breath, away from this focus, just observe that, again, without judgment. See if you can let those distractions go, let them drift on by for now. Even if you might need to return to them later, let them go for now. Guide your mind's attention back to the breath, back to that sense on the exhale of releasing, softening into the ground. So this can serve as a reminder, a physical reminder as much as anything, that the ground is always there holding us. Gravity makes it so. It can be perhaps easy in the culture that we live in to lose touch with that and to literally lose connection with the ground as we, might spend our time in buildings that are stories high, or get into aeroplanes or anything else that makes us feel like we're away from the ground. But of course, we are always in some sort of way connected to or drawn towards the ground ultimately. And the scope during our yoga practice to use our exhale to really help us feel that. So often in our practice, we work in ways to find a rootedness with our physical postures that enables us to, from that place of rootedness, then find more space in other parts of the body. And sometimes we ask effort, sometimes a great deal of physical effort of ourselves in order to kind of make those roots, find that stability. If we come back to the breath, particularly the exhale, we can perhaps start to experience that connection with the ground that creates that rootedness as being a kind of a natural release into the ground. Let your breath return to its natural rhythm now if you have been extending the exhale. Just allow it to settle. Notice how that feels. And if you want to set an intention for your practice today, then just take a moment to do that now. So just seeing what comes up for you. Might be something quite clear. It might take the form of an affirmation. I'm grounded, I'm connected. Just see what, if anything, comes up for you and take a moment to set that intention now. Okay. So if you haven't already, then bend your knees and bring soles of the feet to the mat. And just take a moment with so just have arms resting alongside you wherever you feel comfortable. And just take a moment to see if you can find a little bit more connection between the feet and the ground here. So just actively pressing the ball of each foot into the mat, maybe taking that pressure along to the outer edge of the foot, letting the toes connect, bringing a bit more weight down into the heels, just having a little play around with that connection between the feet and the mat. And you might find that the lower back just lifts slightly or becomes lighter on the mat. That's fine. Just have a play around for a moment. And now use the press of the feet into the mat to just allow the lower back to lift up a bit. We're not coming into bridge pose. We're just allowing the lower back to lift up off the mat enough so that then you can, on your next exhale, slowly replace the lower back with a sense of having a greater surface area connection between the lower back and the mat. So that might feel good after one go, or you might want to just do it one more time. So there's a sense of the very lower part of the spine, and the lower part of the back spreading, lengthening away from you, making greater connection with the mat. Still be aware of the connection between your feet and the mat, so you're not quite so actively pressing into the mat, or rather not so much that you're creating any lift of the lower back off the mat now. So you've got a sense of connection between the lower back and the mat, still a sense of connection between the feet and the ground. So they're not just resting there completely passively. Now keep your attention on the lower back and see if you can have a sense of the lower back drawing into the mat a little more. And Draw navel in towards spine to help with this. So not looking for a really strong movement here, just even if it's just the subtlest sense of more actively increasing the connection between the lower back and the mat. And if it doesn't feel like there's any kind of physical or muscular activity going on there, that's fine. Just bring a focus there and at least energetically think it. Keep that connection, that active connection between the lower back and the mat. Keep navel drawing in towards spine to help with that. And then use your next inhale to pick your feet up off the mat and draw your knees into your chest. Keep your arms resting on the floor alongside you if you can. Just let the knees come into the chest. Take a couple of breaths here. See if on the exhale you can still find that sense of the body softening and releasing into the ground that we explored earlier. And now take your hands on top of your knees, so one hand on top of each knee. Use your next exhale to see if you might draw the knees towards you a little more, if there's any space, any scope for that. Take a couple more breaths. And then on your next inhale, keeping hands on the knees, draw your knees away from you so that knees come to stack above the hips. See if you can keep that sense of connection between the lower back and the mat. Keep navel drawing in towards spine. If it doesn't feel comfortable for hands, so just stay here for a few breaths. If it doesn't feel comfortable to keep hands on the knees, you can let them kind of slide to the top of their thighs or wherever feels comfortable, but you still got some connection between the legs and the hands. On your next exhale, draw the knees back into the chest. And then as you inhale, draw the knees away from you so that knees stack above the hips again. And continue moving at your own pace with your own breath for a few rounds here. If it feels comfortable and helpful to you to extend the length of the inhale and the exhale, then you could do that. And the more slowly you do these movements, the more you're, amongst other things, working with that some of the deeper abdominal muscles and lower back muscles here to work on gently strengthening here. This can, for some anyway, be quite a nice way to work with lower back and abdominal muscles whilst maintaining that support of the floor, the support of the ground. Of course, if you feel any twinges in the lower back, then ease off from this, hug knees into chest if that feels comfortable. Okay, next time you draw knees into the chest, then keep them there. And just allow yourself to soften a little more here, just lying with knees drawn into chest as you normally would. And if it feels nice to take a rock from side to side, then you could do that, or just stay in stillness for a few breaths. Okay. So we're going to make our way up to all fours. So if it's in your practice and you wanted to, you could rock up to seated and then come to all fours from there. As a more gentle practice, I'd recommend coming over onto one side and pausing there for a breath or two, and then using your hands to push yourself up to seated and then make your way to all fours. Whichever way you get there, we'll meet in all fours. We're going to take some cat-cow stretches. A reminder that you can always take the option of taking cat-cow stretches from seated. So that could be seated on a chair with feet planted on the floor, sitting on heels, or sitting with legs crossed. If you're taking the all fours, then just check that shoulders are above wrists, hips are above knees. And then in your own time, to start to ease into your cat-cow movement. So you're inhaling to draw shoulders back, creating space for the chest to draw forward, tailbone sitting up. Exhaling, push the ground away from you with your hands as you curl the spine up towards the ceiling, navel towards spine to help you. Let the head drop, let the tailbone tuck. And keep going, again, matching your movement to your breath. If it feels comfortable too, then you could close your eyes here, or at least soften your gaze so that you're keeping the attention inwards. Maybe you might visualize the shape that you're making with the spine here. And again, if it feels comfortable too, you could extend the length of the breath. So extending both the inhale and the exhale. So they're still the same kind of length each, but just taking a little longer over each. So you can really explore this movement of the spine. See if maybe you can come back to using the exhale to still find that sense of softening. So we're in quite an active pose here and active movement here. But if you think about that exhale when you're coming into your cat pose, what we're asking of our bodies, amongst other things, is to push the ground away from you with your hands. So really kind of find maximum connection between the hands and the ground in order to create as much space as possible to draw the spine up towards the ceiling, in order to create space around the upper back and so on. So with that push of the hands into the mat, which can feel like quite a strong physical muscular effort, see if you can bring the exhale to this so it starts to feel a little bit more, even if it's just a tiny bit more, like a softening and a natural release into the ground for your hands. So I don't mean that it will stop it being muscular effort, but can you kind of energetically and mentally feel like it's a little bit more of a release, a softening? Lovely. Next time you come to your cat's position, so next time you exhale and round the spine, pushing the mat away from you with your hands, draw your bum back towards your heels as if you were making your way into child's pose. And then as you inhale, draw forwards into your cow pose. And as you do that, try and keep connection between the hands and the ground by having the feeling as if the hands were trying to drag back towards your knees. So don't let them move, but there's, you know, as if they're trying to get some traction. And in doing so, you can draw shoulders back, chest draws through the shoulders. Continue like this for a few rounds. So you're rounding the spine up towards the ceiling on the exhale, pushing the mat away from you with your hands as you draw the bum back towards the heels. And then inhaling, drawing forward. So that sense of the hands trying to drag back towards you. Keep elbows tucked in towards you. So try not to let elbows come out to the sides here, even if they might want to support you. Let's take a few more rounds like that. If it feels open to you to take a couple more rounds, then do. But just knowing at any point now you can come back into child's pose and stay there for a few breaths now. That's where we're ending up. Lovely. Next time you come back into child's or towards child's pose, then allow yourself to fully come back into child's pose now. And take any version of child's pose that feels right for you. So you might want to keep hands out in front of you, or bring the arms back behind you for a full release of the shoulders. So if you're bringing arms back behind you, just check that you still feel comfortable, particularly around the head and the neck. So the more support that you can have, particularly between bum and heels, the better, in terms of so that you haven't got pressure going on particularly around the neck. So even, you know, just a rolled up jumper or cardi can help here, increasing connection between bum and heel. If it feels comfortable to, see if you can come back to a pattern of breath where you're lengthening the exhale a little so that the exhale is at least a little bit longer than the inhale. It might just be a couple of seconds longer. It might be double the length of the inhale. Just doing what feels comfortable. So not getting kind of caught up in counting it or anything, but just see if, again, you can have that sense of kind of getting to the bottom of the exhale. And notice here in this position how it feels to nurture that sense of the body softening and releasing into or towards the ground a little more on each exhale. Okay, bring your hands alongside your head. Use an inhale to draw yourself back up to your all fours. And we're going to make our way into downward dog and then to a standing forward fold. So as always, please feel free to take alternatives here. So alternative for downward dog at this point, a nice one would be to take an extended child's pose so that you're still finding length in the spine. And then you could stand up and then make your way into a standing forward fold from standing. You can also take this standing forward fold from seated. So if you're sat in a chair, I just have to imagine a chair, but so imagine that I'm actually properly in a chair, then you can take that same kind of fold, chest forwards and down, belly towards the thighs, and let yourself release that way. If you're coming into downward dog, then from your all fours, just check that your fingers are spread as wide as you can get them. So kind of kneel up off the mat for a moment and just take a look at the fingers. See if you can really get them as wide apart as you can. Keep that, and then bring the hands back to the mat. So you've got maximum surface area connected with the mat. And then take the hands a little further forward so they're no longer underneath the shoulders, the wrists are no longer underneath the shoulders. As you take them further forward, just notice how that feels in terms of keeping that sense of connection. So even if you're not coming to downward dog, if you feel okay to do this bit, this can be quite helpful to work with. So just notice how that feels in terms of having that real connection between the ground and the hands. You haven't got the benefit of the full, almost the full weight of the body, certainly, you know, the weight coming down from the body through the shoulders being above the wrists now. So there needs to be a little bit more of a press into the ground, an active kind of, it's a muscular effort here to keep finding that sense of kind of pushing the ground away from you. So see if you can find that here. Okay. Tuck the toes. Draw navel in towards spine so that that will support you, give you a bit more strength and stability as in a moment we raise our hips. Keep that sense of pushing the ground away from you with the hands so you're active through the hands. And then inhale, raise the knees a couple of inches off the mat and then draw the hips up and back. So it's as if by pushing the ground away from you with your hands, you're then allowing the hips to raise higher. You're finding greater length between the outer edge of each hip and the outer edge of each wrist. And just see, so we're just staying here for a few breaths. See if you can come back to that breath pattern where you're lengthening the exhale a little more, and see if you can find a sense of that exhale being a release down through the arms into the hands connecting more deeply with the ground through a sense of release rather than effort. So of course there's still effort going on, but can you experience some of that as being a natural kind of releasing and spreading down into the ground? Lovely. And you can still be working with that breath pattern, of course, if you're in extended child's pose. If you're in downward dog, in a moment, we'll start walking hands back towards the feet. But just before you hurry to do that, invitation as you do it now, to take it really slowly and see if you can keep the weight in the hands for as long as possible. This can be a nice way of working on wrist strength. So entirely up to you, but you might just play around with that a bit. So you kind of like keep the weight in the hands for longer than you would normally before you allow it to come into the feet. So the shoulders end up a little more above the wrists, or going that way. Eventually allowing the weight to come into the feet. As it fully comes into the feet, into the heels, then you can let the arms go, let the shoulders, let the hands go, let the head and the neck hang heavy. Lovely. So staying in that forward fold for a few breaths now. So now our main connection with the ground is through the feet. And we've talked about this before, but sometimes so in this standing forward fold, you've kind of, it's a very symmetrical pose, and you've got almost all your weight coming down through the feet. So in a way, it can sometimes feel more difficult to really nurture that sense of connection between the feet and the ground, because kind of weight and gravity has almost done it for you. See if you can use the exhale here to nurture that sense of connection between the feet and the ground. So there's a real sense, even if you're just thinking it, even if it feels like that's not translating to the body, there's a real sense on each exhale of energy coming down the body through the feet into the ground, so that the feet are connecting with, releasing into, spreading into the ground a little more on each exhale. Keep the hips lifted high. So from that place of connection with the feet, you're then using energy. So if you're thinking about the inhale, you can think about or develop a sense of inhaling energy up from the ground, up through the feet, up the legs, all the way up to the hips. So hips lift high. Draw navel in towards spine to help with that. And that will also help to create the space for you to then allow the whole of the upper body to soften and release. Lovely. Bring your hands onto your hips, have a bend in your knees. And as you next inhale, hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and up. Exhale, release. Maybe have a little bit of a shake out. Perhaps a little roll of the shoulders. Super. Great. Okay, and then come to your mountain pose. So come to Tadasana, feet are hip width apart. Take a moment to settle in here. So just, again, you can just for a moment, just check in with the feet. Maybe have a little rock from front to back until you settle in a place where you feel like you're evenly weighted through both feet, like you've got good connection between each foot and the ground. Maybe you might lift the toes up for a moment and then replace them one by one. And just check the tailbone is drawing down. So as you draw the tailbone down, you're encouraging a tilt in the pelvis that allows you to be a little more supported around here. So hips are hugging in a bit more, glutes are engaged, thigh muscles are engaged. Maybe navel gently towards spine to help support all of this as well. See if you can draw shoulders back and down a little, support that with the arms being positioned so that elbow creases are facing outwards to support that drawing back and down of the shoulders. So you've got more space across the chest. If you haven't already, then close your eyes or soften your gaze for a moment. Come back to the breath. And come back to that pattern of breath where the exhale is a little longer, or if that doesn't feel comfortable, still you're using the exhale either way to continue to nurture that sense of connection with the ground. So now that might feel like a more kind of vertical journey that's going on. So just noticing what works for you, just tapping into the kind of energies of the breath. So as you exhale, have a sense of the body releasing and softening down into the ground a little more. So that kind of goes through the feet as the part of the body that is in connection with the ground, but just noticing what other parts of the body are kind of feeling that gravitational pull, if you like, if you want to think about it in terms that sort of cultural terms that kind of might resonate with us a little more. So taking a few more rounds with that focus on the exhale, that sense of releasing, connecting with the ground a little more. Now on your next inhale, draw your arms forward and up. Reach up with the fingertips. So keep using your exhales to find that sense of release and rootedness down to the ground. And included in that is a sense of the shoulders softening and releasing down. So shoulders are still drawing down away from the ears. But use your inhales now. So adjust your breath pattern so that inhale and exhale is of equal length. You might extend both, the length of both, if that feels comfortable. Use your inhales to find a little bit more length in the spine and to find length in the side body too. If you can keep encouraging the shoulders to be drawing down away from the ears, even whilst the arms are active and fingertips are reaching up towards the ceiling. Palms facing towards each other if that feels comfortable. Lovely. Turn your palms to face outwards and use an exhale to sweep the arms out to the sides and bring them to shoulder height. See if you can stay active through the fingertips as you do that, so that you're still actively reaching out through the fingertips as you get to shoulder height. Everything else is still in your mountain pose. Tailbone is still drawing down. You're still using your exhales to find that sense of rootedness, groundedness all the way down through to the feet. See if for a couple of inhales here, you can find a sense of expansion across the chest, radiating out from the center, all the way across the chest, the shoulders, along the arms to the fingertips. Now turn the palms to face forwards and use your next exhale to sweep the arms forwards. Bring the right arm above the left and then wrap your hands around, give yourself a hug. So hands are somewhere on the shoulders, depends on the body as to where exactly, but give yourself a hug here. So we're creating space in the back body here, noticing the shoulder blades drawing away from each other. See if on your next exhale, you can find a softening in the shoulders. So although there's quite a lot of, might feel like there's quite a lot of constriction around the shoulder and tightness around the shoulders, can you allow a sense of softness, release to come into the shoulders, the top of the shoulders releasing down. Breathe into the space between the shoulder blades at the back. Either staying here, or you might explore taking the forearms up to vertical. If that feels helpful in terms of opening out, particularly around the shoulder blades here. So we're working with opening aspects of the shoulders here. If by doing this, it feels like everything just gets more constricted and bunched up, then come back to this, it will serve you much better. If you've got forearms raised in this way, you might explore wrapping them around each other so palms start to press together. But again, if that just feels like it brings in lots of tension, then ease off. Taking a couple more breaths wherever you are. Lovely. Then on your next inhale, sweep the arms out, palms facing forwards. And then as you exhale, sweep them forwards again, left arm above right this time. So coming the opposite way round. Even if you're thinking you might raise the forearms, don't rush, don't let the mind get involved. Don't rush to do that now. Take some breaths, giving yourself a hug. Allow yourself to notice. Allow yourself to explore, scope to let the shoulders soften, even whilst you're kind of working with them, you know, potentially quite intensely. Can you use the exhale to find that sense of softening too? Breathing into the space between the shoulder blades. And then maybe exploring taking the forearms up, maybe exploring wrapping them around each other. But again, this isn't about levels or, you know, one of these options being in any way better than the other. As always, the very best practice you can take is the one that serves you best right now. Keep using the exhale to find that sense of softening through the shoulders, but also taking that all the way down through to the feet, a sense of staying connected with the ground. Use your next inhale to sweep the arms out to the sides again. Then turn the palms to face down, and exhale, draw the arms down alongside you. And once they're down, maybe take a little bit of a roll of the shoulders one way and the other way. Great. Let's just work with the wrists a little bit more. So an often neglected part of the body for us. So just doing a little bit of wrist release work. So obviously just working mindfully, just see what feels right for you, but just using one hand to just gently draw the other back so that you're inviting an opening around the inner wrist here. Just see how that feels. Taking a few breaths there, and then taking it the other way. So you're just very gently working with the wrist here, just exploring its range of movement here. And then taking the same on the other side. So just a gentle easing. This is a nice, you know, this can be a really nice thing to do, particularly, you know, if you sort of keep on the keyboard a lot, that kind of thing, just to ease the wrists out a little from time to time, taking it the other way if you haven't already. Lovely. And then taking circling of the wrists. And you can either do this with fists, but it's also, I think, quite nice to do it with the hand, with the fingers involved, and even you can kind of let the fingers take on a bit of a life of their own as well. I mean, notice how that feels for you. Maybe notice what comes up in the mind doing that, because you're up, you know, there's kind of a bit more to focus on, but just taking the rotations one way and then taking them back the other way. Right. And then just easing off, maybe shaking. If they're feeling nice and open and you feel like shaking them off a little, then you could do that too. Super. Okay, so do you all have some wall space that you can use for a few minutes? Just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, maybe, if you can't. I think is that a thumbs up, Jill? Yes, yeah, okay, great. Just give me, like, I mean, I'll check the screen again in a moment. If you're looking lost and don't have a wall, then that's absolutely fine, but it's just a nice thing to do if you can. So find some wall space. And so before we start, it's probably helpful to give you the context that what we're working on here, really we're working on preparation for downward dog. So it's a pose that we take a lot. And so you probably, from your own experience, will know how it impacts on your shoulders, arms, hands, wrists. But it certainly has the scope to take its toll on the hands, wrists, arms, and shoulders. And we're potentially asking quite a lot of weight to come down to there, which is why we're trying to work on that sense of connection between the ground, and particularly between the ground and the hands. So here we're kind of reorientating downward dog so that we can work on that sense of really connecting with the ground with the hands, but work on it with the wall instead. So let me just get to a position where you can fully see me. I think that's fine. So come to a position where you can have fingers spread wide, just as you would in downward dog, and hands are shoulder width apart. And then you're standing away from the wall, so your feet are about hip width apart. And then start to, and arms are probably at about shoulder height at this point. Start to press the wall away from you. So as if you're trying to move the wall, literally move the wall. And as you do that, allow your hips to draw back. So just as you'd allow them to draw up, if we're in downward dog, allow them to draw back. And from there, you'll soon get a sense of whether you need to adjust where your feet are, whether they need to come further forwards or further back. But don't draw them further back just so that you can get more push into the wall. What we're really wanting to do here is end up with the hips kind of drawing back, sort of, so they're almost back behind the heels kind of thing, or it feels like that at least. Because first and foremost, downward dog is a spine lengthener. So we're really wanting to lengthen the spine as much as possible. And you can also play around with the height that you've got the hands at. So it might be that you find that taking them a little lower allows you to then take the hips a little further back. So see how that feels. And what you might start to notice is some work around the shoulders here as well. Work kindly with the body, obviously do what feels comfortable for you. If you're starting to feel it in the shoulders a little more, you might start to work with that rotation of the upper arms out and round as if the armpits are trying to face towards each other. And this can, for some, feel like a more supported place from which to just have a little bit of a play with that. So as we do that, what we're looking to do is create a bit more openness around the shoulders and create more broadness around the upper back, more space around the upper back. So just play with this for another minute or so. Feel free to come in and out. You don't need to kind of sustain it the whole time. It's just an opportunity to practice that sense of pushing the wall away from you. So fingers are spread as wide as you can get them. And you've just got more opportunity to kind of notice what's going on in the arms there. Hips are actively drawing back. Lovely. So Jill, I don't know whether it's hard to tell sometimes with camera angles as well, but maybe there might be scope for your feet to come slightly further forwards and the hips to kind of more actively draw back that way. But see how that feels. And sometimes, you know, it depends. It might be about hamstring length as well. It might feel that shortens everything, in which case go back to where you are. But you're still really wanting to feel like the activeness is kind of from that outer edge of the wrist to outer edge of the hip. It's just that now the hip is drawing back rather than up. Lovely. That's super. So feel free to just continue with that just for a few moments, a few breaths more. One thing that you might explore, so entirely up to you, but as an optional extra, you could maybe see how it feels to gradually take the hands down lower and lower. So hips are still, so feel that relationship between, you know, adjusting the position of the hands and the hips, drawing further back until you get to a point where you make your way into a forward fold. Now it depends on your distance as to whether you just feel like you'll fall over if you do that, but maybe you can get to a certain point and then make your way into a standing forward fold. So whether you're using the wall to find that forward fold or not, just bring that practice with the wall to a close and just make your way into a standing forward fold now. Lovely. Take a few more breaths there. Maybe lengthen the exhale. But see if you can still keep that sense of the hips being active here. The weight, the real focus now for connection is between the feet and the ground. Keep that sense of connection through the exhale. Lovely. Then bring hands onto the hips. Have a bend in the knees as you inhale. Draw the chest forwards and up, as long as you don't have a wall in the way. Great. And then make your way back to your mat if you're not there already, and come to the top of your mat, back into your mountain pose. Settle again in your mountain pose. This time bringing palms of the hands together in front of the heart. So fingers are still spread wide, palms are pressing together, thumbs are resting against the center of the chest. Take a moment to just close the eyes or soften the gaze. And if you set an intention at the start of your practice, just take a moment to recall that now. Opening your eyes or lifting your gaze. On your next inhale, sweep your arms up, reaching up with the fingertips, finding that length in the spine and the side body. Then as you next exhale, hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and down, sweep the arms down, coming to your forward fold. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift, palms of the hands resting on the front of the legs, shoulders drawing back, chest drawing forwards. Exhale, fold forwards, come back into your forward fold. Take a moment here. So bend the knees as much as you need to so that you can bring the hands down onto the ground, just in front of and slightly wider than your feet. Fingers spread wide. See if you can allow the weight to come into your hands a little more. So a sense of kind of rocking the weight forward into the hands a bit more. So maybe there's a sense of the shoulders being directly above the wrists a bit more as well. Take an inhale here. And then as you exhale, draw the right foot back and drop the back knee. And then draw the left foot back. Actually, sorry, if it feels easier to keep the back knee lifted before you draw the left foot back, because there's more space then feel free to do that. But either way, you end up with both feet back and both knees drawn down onto the mat. So you're in a low plank here. Shoulders are above wrists. Draw navel in towards spine. Keep pushing the mat away from you with your hands. So as you do that, you almost feel like your arms are lengthening. Keep navel drawing towards spine. Have a sense of the tailbone drawing away from you. Lovely. Keep the toes tucked. So from here, we're going to come up into a downward dog. So feel free to draw back into an extended child's pose if that feels better for you. So on your next inhale, push the ground away from you with your hands as you lift the knees and draw the hips up and back. So one last chance, if you want to take it to just work with downward dog, maybe notice anything from working with the wall that you might bring to your downward dog. So you don't need to overthink it, but just use the breath to see if you can, on each exhale, find a sense of greater connection between the hands and the ground. So you're actively pressing the ground away from you, but see if you can use the exhale to make that feel like more of a natural release into the ground. Hips are lifting high. Maybe see if you can bring that rotation of the upper arms, but you want to feel like that rotation of the upper arms is initiated and supported by the upper back muscle. So you're not just kind of rotating at the shoulder joint. Just knowing that that we will come to child's pose after this. So invitation to stay for a few more breaths in downward dog if that feels good. But knowing that at any point you can draw knees down, draw bum back to the heels and make your way into child's pose. That's where we'll go in a few breaths anyway. If you're still working in downward dog, maybe if you haven't already, extend the exhale. So there's a real focus on that releasing down. So that might be a softening and a releasing of the head and the neck, a releasing of the front body, but also maybe a sense of the hands releasing down into the ground a little more, as well as still that sense of pushing the ground away from you. Lovely. If you haven't already, then use your next exhale to draw knees down to the mat, draw bum back to the heels, and make your way into a child's pose. So if it feels comfortable to take the arms back behind you now, then do that. As I mentioned before, if that feels like that places pressure, particularly on the neck, then have the arms out in front, or you can, or certainly explore taking the forearms underneath the forehead. If it feels comfortable to, for a few breaths in child's pose now, you could take the knees a little wider. We've done quite a lot of closed hip work, so it's nice to just ease the hips out a little. If you've got arms back behind you, then they might just drape over the legs, but that's fine. You're still allowing the shoulders to release. Come back to the breath. Breathe into the space that you find in this pose, maybe in the back body. As you breathe out, find that sense of softening and releasing into the ground a little more. Bring your hands alongside your head and use an inhale to draw yourself back up to seated. And just stay in a seated position with bum on heels. If that feels okay, you can always take some height between bum and heels to relieve pressure on the feet or the knees. Or you could come to sitting on a chair, feet in contact with the ground. If none of those are an option for you, then you could sit with legs crossed. Take an inhale, see if you can bring a bit more lift to the chest, find a bit more length in the spine. And then as you exhale, draw around towards the right, coming into a gentle twist. Let the right hand come to rest by the right hip, or might be a bit further round, but in contact with the ground as close to the body as you can. Left hand rests wherever feels comfortable. Just take a few breaths here in your twist. Inhaling to keep finding length in the spine. Exhaling, seeing if you can find that sense of softening all the way down through to the ground. So a softening of the shoulders, down into the sit bones, the feet, connecting a little more with the ground each time. Now inhale back to center. And then exhale, draw around to the left. Left hand comes to rest, close to the body. Right hand rests wherever feels comfortable. Lovely. Inhale back to center. And just before we make our way down to Shavasana, we'll just take a few rounds of alternate nostril breathing. So I'll talk you through a couple of rounds and then invite you to take a couple more rounds by yourself. If this is a familiar part of your practice and you want to tune me out from the start and take your own pace, please feel free to do that. The general principles, I think you've probably all practiced it before, but I'm also talking for anyone listening to this on recorded. So, but the general principle is that we use the thumb and the forefinger to alternately block a nostril and breathe through the the opposite nostril. When you block, you just need a gentle bit of pressure, just where you get to the point on the nose where the bony bit stops and the fleshy bit starts, just that little bit there. So you don't need to kind of, you know, really squish the delicate nose in. It's just a gentle pressure. And if you kind of lose your way, the mind drifts and you've kind of lost where you're at, just remember that whatever nostril you've just breathed out of is the nostril you'll then breathe in through. So just have your left hand resting wherever feels comfortable. Bring your right hand up in front of your face and just take a breath to prepare. Now block the right nostril with the thumb. Inhale through the left. 4, 3, 2, 1. Block the left with the forefinger. Release the thumb. Exhale through the right. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the right. 4, 3, 2, 1. Block the right. Release the forefinger. Exhale through the left. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the left. 4, 3, 2, 1. Block the left. Release the right. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the right. 4, 3, 2, 1. Block the right. Release the left. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Continue at your own pace. Maybe exploring a slight pause at the top of the inhale, even if it's just for a second or two. Whenever you next breathe out of your left nostril and release your hands down and just allow your breath to settle. So take your time, stay with your rhythm, stay with your breath. Just knowing that once you've released, you're just focusing on the breath returning to its natural rhythm, just noticing how that feels. And then making your way down to your Shavasana, so grabbing anything else, anything you might need, any extra layers, anything for covering your eyes, and settle into a comfortable position. As you take your Shavasana now, see if you can come back to nurturing that sense of connection with the ground. So we've worked on some stuff today where we are asking physical, muscular effort of our bodies. There's no denying that. But we've been attempting to frame that within a sense of that natural connection, that natural drawing towards the ground that we have. So now in Shavasana, what we're asking of ourselves is to let go of that physical effort and just stay with that sense of natural connection to and releasing into the ground. Just reminding ourselves again that the ground is always, always holding us. And see if in your Shavasana today you can come back to that idea of using the exhale to nurture a sense of the body softening and releasing into the ground a little more. And just knowing that this space is held for you while you do that. Starting now to bring some deeper breaths into your body. Slowly bringing some movement back, maybe wiggling fingers and toes, perhaps rotating wrists and ankles. Taking any movements now, any stretches, sighs, yawns, anything that feels good as you bring your full awareness back to your body. Taking your time to slowly make your way back up to any comfortable seated position, keeping your eyes closed or having your gaze soft as you do that. And taking a moment once you're there, if you set an intention at the start of your practice, to recall that intention now. Bringing palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Take a moment to be grateful to yourself for showing up for this practice today. And a moment for us to be grateful that we have this practice of yoga available to us. and that we have this way of connecting and practicing together. And I invite you to think of anything else in your life that you're grateful for right now. Bowing your head down towards your fingertips. Namaste. Releasing when you're ready. Thank you guys, well done.